I'm Melanie Swayze, a global real estate advisor with Gibson Sotheby's based in Metro Boston. I closely advise homebuyers and sellers of all stages of life, guiding them to intelligent, winning decisions.
I'm Derek Lumpkins, a real estate investor with a background in community organizing. I also enhance equity and inclusion initiatives at companies and organizations, and I guide leaders through executive coaching.
When we get together, we dive into the intersections of culture, class, mindset, and Black freedom.
Welcome to the Blacklining Forum,
a podcast about Black wealth, power, and land. Derek.
Hey, what's going on?
It's good. It's a little bit like a party at the moment.
It does feel like that. Oh, and happy summer, by the way.
Happy summer. We are in, mid-July.
Yep. I mean, you only have another 2 days because you're in Boston. Maybe 5.
I was up in New Hampshire last week, and there were like 2 or 3 trees where you could see red.
What?
On the leaves.
That's ridiculous.
Anyway.
Well, it's here now, so we get to enjoy it for what it is.
These moments.
Yeah. I was also thinking about our last conversation. We were talking about your time here in Barcelona, your experiences, your perceptions. And I was thinking about community, because you were talking about a lot of different ways in which you experienced and saw community, what that looked like, how it differed from being in the States. And so that was just kind of sitting with me. And I was thinking about community in the States, the ways that, and especially now with how communities are being torn apart and how communities are being pressured from a lot of different sides. And so, in the interest of keeping this conversation on the lighter side, I was thinking about community, and, it's summertime. So communities have cookouts, maybe your family has a cookout. And so it's like, well, who from your community or who from another community would you invite to the cookout? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that yet. I'm going to sprung the question on you.
Yes, I've been showing up at people's cookouts. I'm curious who you would invite to your cookout.
So, and this ties in with some conversations we've had in the past. Connecting it to this podcast, I would invite an Afrofuturist because there's so much going on now and so much is happening so fast.
Yes.
That's the thing. There's so much happening. I don't know if we can call it history yet, but there's so much action that's happening so fast. So much change is happening so fast. In addition to all the ways in which history, culture, arts, knowledge is either being erased or suppressed.
Yes.
I'm kind of like, well, we can recover that to some degree. But we also are at a point where I feel like we need to begin imagining what the future could be. Because that I feel is like what's missing right now. Is like people are talking about the future in a very short term and in a span of like a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 4 years, but not in a span of like 10 years, 20 years. Because when you think about how some of the politics now is really 50 years of action. It's not just something that just appeared out of the past, couple of years or something. So I'm like, I would like to invite an Afrofuturist to the cookout just to have that conversation. And that's not to exclude people who are not of the African diaspora. But, there's so many times where like you hear things like, will there be Afros in the future? Or will, Black people go to space? Like, there's Gil Scott-Heron's Whitey on the Moon. I mean, there's so many times where Black people and maybe other people of color kind of wondering, where are we in the future? And even just the other day, I was reading an article about I didn't quite read the whole thing, but an Indian astronaut who went into space, and a lot of these young Indian kids were like awestruck and inspired by that. So it's sort of like, who's helping us really think about the future and dream about the future?
I love that about you. I love that you're always thinking in a broad swath, big picture, and you are visioning way out ahead. I respect and appreciate that, inspired by that. I was actually realizing, not only have I been to cookouts, I actually hosted one a couple weeks ago, and I had people from really all walks of life. I didn't think about it that way. It was an organic rolling invitation list, but we had over 50 people show up. And a number of people in the crowd commented on how just wildly mixed. My
Mm.
world is, there were people really truly of all class backgrounds, walks of life, ages. And that's just sort of natural to me. And so my first thought was, well, that's important. Who's at the cookout is people who have all these different vested interests that recognize the overlap. But if I were going to pull out one thing, it's actually a counterpoint to what you're saying about Afrofuturists. I want a historian. I want somebody who has such a perspective, such a clear-eyed perspective about what's playing out now that is a replay from the early 1900s, for
Mm.
example, um, or how the arguments that are being put forth about these like flimsy arguments about trying to protect the homeland by essentially putting people into what's starting to look like concentration camps.
Let's
And
be real, they are concentration
yeah,
camps.
that somehow that's justified because, and I'm referring to some recent speech or spiel from the vice president about that inheritors of the Confederacy have more of a stake in being here than people who have come here recently, even if they've come here legally. And it's just nuts. What you're seeing is the circle of belongings getting narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. But then you think about my cookout, and it's like, no, no, actually, all kinds of people belong here, are vested here, are contributing here. So how is it that you're going to get to try to narrow this circle of
Mm.
who we actually are? You don't actually get to do that. So to have a historical perspective about actually splicing and dicing, and even if you're talking about who fought in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, a lot of Black people fought in those wars. So stop whitewashing our history. And so for me, I think I need us to be, whatever we're experiencing right now, to be shot through with such clear
Mhm.
perspective, so that we can even be receptive to, attuned to a futurist vision.
Right. And let's also, I know you mentioned the wars, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, but let's remember we don't have to limit people's participation in wars
That's right.
to show that they have contributed to the country, that they bring value. I mean, there's so many other ways.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. No. And the only reason I brought that up because that's one of the more recent claims that he's mounting, to
mhm.
say that there's a culture war against people who are what we would consider reactionary, and nativist, and to
Mhm.
say that there needs to be a choice, either or, either they go or the newer arrivals go, and that's
Right.
just bananas on so many levels. But we need to know that that's bananas, and we need to know that all of these arguments mean that they're coming for you next. They're
Right.
coming for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. So I think this is a good segue to bring on our recurring guest.
Our cousin,
Yes.
DEI consultant, big thinker, Malia Lazu. Welcome.
Hello, I'm like taking notes on what you guys are saying because I'm always so into the pre conversation.
Well,
Love it.
what notes struck you this time?
And who are you bringing to the cookout?
Yes,
So
who are you
I'm
bringing to
bringing
the
a
cookout?
comedian,
Ooh, yeah.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I feel like, there's something about the way a comedian can speak truth to power
Yes.
that's just really healthy and what we need. And like, I've seen some like Bill Burr, like going on and like just the way he's able to read the manosphere, which people think like,
Okay.
he's a part of them, right? So like they're very open with him and with their thoughts. And it's, so yeah, so that's who I would bring. I'm bringing the jokes.
Thank you. And that makes me think, right, we need artists right
Yes.
now,
Mm-hmm.
because artists, like you say, help us see clearly. Poets, comedians,
See
clear
clearly and
perspective,
also see differently.
and unvarnished, and unvarnished.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Harry Belafonte always used to say that artists are the keepers of truth.
Yeah.
Mm.
And they can be futurists, right? I mean, they can be different things too, right? But it's very important that we have that there. So, well, I guess like what struck me was just really starting to think about what is community, right? Like we say community. And, is community our country, right? Like, is the United States of America a community? Like, is that, and, we don't have to say whether it is or not right now, right? Like, but, um, is the idea of a country a community? And I think for me, like, I think of community much closer, so like, yes, I believe in Pan Africanism, right? Like, I believe in diaspora. I believe that there's an interconnectedness that can allow us to build community. But I think community is a choice. And so I like wrote down like, I didn't want to Google it. So I sort of wrote down my definition of community, right? What do I think it is? And I think it's a group of people who decide to
Mhm.
come together to create a quality of life based on shared values and traditions.
Yeah.
And that leads to safety, evolution, growth, right? Like we definitely do it for outcomes, right? We're evolutionarily designed to need to be in community, right? If we all want to go back to when we became, right, like the agricultural, right? We started living in these communities, right? Like hunter gatherers, right? We started clicking up, right? Like, and so I think like when I think about community and like barbecue and this idea, I think it's such a great conversation to have right now because for me, I am becoming very clear that like my community is not the United States and it's not even Boston, right? Like, but it's a group of people that I know
Mhm.
that have come together and we have a set of shared agreements, right? Like there's an accountability to community, right? You don't just like flit off, right? Like you got to show up, you got to hold, right? You got to do those things and you want to be with people who do those things back. And I think right now, what's going to get us through this moment is us building a community that is bulletproof, ice proof, right? That is all of those things. I think about the abolitionist community, and you were talking about, the soldiers of the Civil War and I mean, even Revolutionary War, right? Like all the wars we fought in, and it was happening in this moment of abolition where black people were also fighting inside, right, to keep us alive. And you think about the black community it took to create the many underground railroads, right? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't just one, right? Like, um, that's how I want us to think about and define community right now. Like thinking about community as the relationships and trust it took to build the Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm. And yes. And so one thing I want to say about this metaphor of the cookout: don't bring ice. Don't bring ice cream. Don't bring ice cubes. Don't bring any ice. Don't want any ice in this cookout. If you can't drink some warm soda, you don't come. Don't come. But all jokes aside, um, in thinking about being intentional about community, I have been kind of wondering also, like, how do we get different communities to talk to each other? Because we see how things have been taking place in New York with the Haitian community and in LA with some of the community actions that are happening there. Those are two places on two different coasts. But within New York or within LA, within Chicago, within Boston, like, are communities talking to each other? And if so, how? Like, what
Mm.
are they sharing? Maybe we shouldn't know what they're sharing because it's too sensitive given what's going on. But I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is it going to take to get communities to band together in a
Yes.
way that's going to ensure their survival? Because I'm not only just thinking about, people being snatched and kidnapped off the street, but if a homeowner is kidnapped, what happens to his house? If a business owner is taken away, what happens to his business? How do we support them as well?
Mhm.
Absolutely. I've been thinking a lot about this because looking at the response in LA was really heartening for me. I think about, I'm paraphrasing Gandhi, but he talks about how he would rather have people have a violent response than no response at all, right? Because recognizing your humanity, like anger and self defense, is a natural response when someone's coming at you, right? Like, I mean, many might even say nonviolence is the unnatural response, right? It's the response of an elevated people, right, who can think things through more than one or two steps. And and so I think when I was looking at LA, and I have one of my mentees who was out there, and what she said, which was so interesting, is LA just stays organizing in
Mm.
intersectional communities. So, like the fires that happened, they were organizing around that. They have this mutual aid infrastructure, right? And before the fires, right, whenever you have a chance, you try to do some gang peace, right, with the violence and, the sort of ongoing bubbling civil war that you have, in LA. And so I think that places like LA, you have Black and brown communities and Asian, but not, still not so much, but Black and brown communities that have been trying to stop gangs, have been trying to stop violence, right? Have been trying to just stop things together, that this then becomes natural. But I think that might be different than Brooklyn, right? So I want to recognize, I think many things can bring communities together in different ways, like you didn't, when you were looking at the videos in Brooklyn, it wasn't, there wasn't that much um intersectionality, right? It looked like the Haitians of Brooklyn came to protect their neighborhood. And they're very interconnected already, right? They're probably in many different ways connected economically with one another, right? They go to the same church, they shop at the same stores, their aunties know one another, right? Like, and so it'll be interesting because I think if you keep putting your foot on New York's neck, like you're gonna get an East Coast version. It'll become like the East Coast version of LA, right? Like New York is a very empowered people, and very New York, right? Like so that'll be interesting. But so you see the Haitian community coming together again, because they're immigrating here, right? They're immigrating together. You would probably see something similar in Miami, right? But how do we actually make sure people are talking to one another? And I think,
Mhm.
there's a lot of great organizations working on that, and some cities are probably better than others. But both examples that we're talking about, I think community came together in different ways, right? But you still saw a strong output of, no, you're not taking our grandma and throwing her in the damn van. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about this like on a kind of wider frame and even a little bit of a philosophical frame because that's the only place my brain can go when I think about people ending up in basements for 12 days at a time because they just got yanked off of a parking lot and no one asked them anything about who they are. I just it's so nutty, that I have to kind of pull back. And one of the things I've been really thinking about is troubling this concept of who is a citizen. I just think I'm so uncomfortable with that word unless we get really clear about empowering that word to mean more than an inheritor of the flag because you went through some specific steps. I think when we think back again, thinking about history, the concept of citizen that came out of the Revolutionary War was about, oh, we are all claiming this place because we hold certain values in common, as you were describing, Malia. So that there's a citizenry because we're banding together as opposed to what is my freaking status. And so I just feel like this intensity about us needing to get protective about what it means to be a citizen, a resident, a dweller, a denizen, but someone who belongs because you've plugged in, you are connected to networks, you're part of a community, you live here, you contribute, you make money, you spend money, this is your home. Your status does not need to be the thing that determines whether or not you get treated as a human. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I rarely use the word American, but it is absolutely un American to be treating people this way Although I saw your head tilt, Derek. Actually, maybe it is American because we've done this before. We've done this to
It's
Japanese.
historically American.
We've
It's
done
historical.
this. We've done this. We've done this. We've done this. Right, but it violates what we claim, at least
Well,
of
our brand.
what our brand about what it means to make this place. But all of that is in dispute right now because of demographics, because there's a mounting increase of proportionality of people who are brown and black and newer to this country than white people. Birth rates are dropping, and that is a threat to people on the right. And that has just been that way. They've known this for decades, and now we're seeing a lot of this come to a head. So there's a lot of violence in claiming the identity of this place and who belongs here and who makes this place America. And I just feel like I need us to like be honest about what does it mean to be a citizen? Who gets to claim that? Who gets to claim that? And even if you can't claim it legally with a specific status, how are we protecting people who can't claim it with a specific status? I think that's what I want, is to know that whoever's at the cookout are people who are going to band together and protect people and treat them as citizens, treat them as people who belong here because they're plugging in to what the values are of this place. They claimed this place, they chose this place. That's originally what it meant to become a citizen.
Well, one other thing I'll just add to that. I think there's a level just below citizen, and that's human, because that's what I think is also missing, is this aspect of where people are not being treated with humanity or dignity or the sense that they have any human value. I mean, yes, I hear everything you're saying about, we need to be more clear or like be more expansive with how we describe who's a citizen, but also we need to be all encompassing that we all are human and we all deserve dignity and respect and to be treated in a way that doesn't diminish any of that.
I agree with that, and as a baseline, but I also think yet you could say, well, and as I've heard some conservatives say, well, there could be a more, let's say, compassionate way of exiting people from this country. Like, yes, still push them out, but they maybe give them some semblance of due process, maybe not beat them up on their way out, right? So, yes, there's the humanity piece, and I think that's critical as a baseline, but also I want to trouble the whole idea about who belongs and who doesn't. And then, yeah, everyone has a right to be treated with dignity. The only reason that people are being mistreated is to try to turn them into some kind of monster in the minds of the public. Is to create this specter of that they are a threat. And it's like a big, 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 big lie. So, and I think it's like, are we going to wait until the economy starts to tilt, for us to realize how dependent
Yes.
we are on
Yes, we will wait.
and underground economies in the US and cash economies of people who just work for nothing and work, 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 work.
Well, and what you're seeing is that, they're now suggesting that if you're in one of these jails, maybe you can be let out to work on the farms,
Concentration camps.
right? Concentration camps, right? Like
Plantation.
um plantation,
Plantation.
slavery. And I think it's like like you're saying about this floor, like when people come here, they come here, very few people want to up and leave their home. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? Like I'm feeling it now as I'm like, I should probably leave. And I'm like, everyone I love is within these 50 states, right? Like, so if I just think about like what it would take me to like up and, leave and all of a sudden not have friends, not speak the language, like, and I'd be doing it with a safety net, right? Like, with a little bit of money, being able to hire lawyers and all of this stuff. And if that seems like really disheartening to me, like I can't imagine if you're forced to because there's violence and, like what this country is becoming. And so to not have empathy, like I feel like on an individual, and not all of them, right? Like I understand that some of them are as sociopathic as Steve Miller, right?
Who is the they? And now I want to follow. Who are you saying?
Like the people who are supporting
Oh yes. Oh
Gaga,
yeah. I,
right? And supporting, like
yeah. Hmm.
there's absolutely some sociopaths, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that there's people that like, if there was an abuelita in the street who like her car was broken down, they would pull over, you know what I mean? And like help her with her car, right? Like we get real big when we're in community, right? And maybe that's like another aspect of community, right? Like, you can get the group mob mentality, even though that's not really who you are, or who you thought you were, right? Like as a person, and maybe even how you show up, so um anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, because I was like, that's a really interesting also way to look at, like you were talking about, Melanie, like what it would mean to like be at the cookout and ICE shows up, right? Like all of a sudden, like these are our people, like, or
Absolutely.
in that part in Sinners, spoiler alert, right? Where Annie's like, she's family, right? Like that's why she's here. And that's why, even though you look like her, you can't be here,
Mhm.
right? Like that, those kinds of ties
That's right.
um
That's right.
can also become a cult, can also, right? So like I think like the accountability, like there's stuff in there that's important that helps us not get to here,
Yes.
right? Educating your citizenry so they
Yeah,
know how to live in a democracy,
that's right.
right? Like
They
so that they
understand
know
that what
it's
they
not
have
all
is,
about them.
yes, they understand what they have is a democracy, and that is fueled by these forms of participation.
And it
Um,
means you don't get to win all the time.
that's right. That's right. You're protecting other people's right to be, even if you don't feel excited about them being here. That's part of the program. That's part of the program.
So we have a few minutes left. Can we talk about Sinners real quick? Melanie, did you
Okay,
see
wait,
it?
but
Yeah.
before we do, because I can tie Sinners in, but I want to just tell you guys this experience that I've had for like the last 2 months
Tell us.
that I think ties into community, and Sinners was also a part of it.
Yes.
So we can jump right back to it. But it got me thinking about the quote unquote black community, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that means, right, to us on any given day, right? But so, I live in Boston, I live in Roxbury, which is a historical black community becoming less and less every day. But, we're still here. And then you have like the Black Boston conversation, which, is always very interesting. And, the word docile comes up for me a lot, and just the way we let our leaders be taken from us, and, and things like that. Anyway,
You
so
you're saying that specific to within Boston?
Boston, yes, very much, right? Like,
Hmm.
and but I've always said like, well, like this is what happens, right? When you're occupied, right? Like you eventually become docile, right? Like,
Hmm.
and they take your leaders, and you just hope our leader shouldn't have done anything bad. Our leader has
I
to be
see.
perfect a
I
hundred
see. I
percent
see.
of the time, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So then I go to Memphis. And I go to Memphis to support the Big We, which had reopened Claiborne Temple. I think I was the last time I was on the podcast, I may have mentioned a little something about them. But the church was burnt down,
Hmm.
and so was the executive director's house. But so we went to Memphis to like show solidarity, and let folks know, listen, they ain't going nowhere, so we ain't going nowhere, and we're just going to continue to support and blah blah blah. Then when I was in Memphis, Ryan Coogler had a viewing of Sinners in Clarksdale. And he did it with his whole weekend of like creative entrepreneurship and classes and all this stuff. And the reason why he did it is because Sinners actually isn't filmed in Clarksdale, even though it says it is.
Hmm.
And so the residents of Clarksdale wrote a letter like, yo, bro, like, you're celebrating all of our shit. And like, we ain't got one dime. We didn't sell not one nothing because of this. And so he came and like, and they don't even have a movie theater in Clarksville.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. But they did the whole show in the community theater. Ryan Coogler came with his pregnant wife, like very pregnant, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it was obviously something important, right? They wanted to show up. They wanted to love on the community, right? So beautiful. And then the Delta, and there's music and there's dancing, right? So then from there, I go to Philly.
Hmm.
And in Philly, I go to Roots Picnic. And Saturday was so bad. It's owned by Live Nation now, so they could give a shit about the music fans experience. So like they were delayed like 8 hours, and folks are like organizing. Questlove had to turn off his comments, because it was $125 a day, and some people paid up to $1,000. And so it was like, again, Black people mad, but organizing, right? Like, get on Questlove thing, right? Like we're all talking amongst ourselves, right? Organize and da 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 da. Then I went to Chicago to see Kendrick Lamar.
Come on.
Which also had the Rando Jazz Festival happening at the park. So it was like, in like 6 weeks, it was like these very Black, very different, from the South to the Delta, to the almost South, right, with Philly, to Chicago, right, the up, right, where everyone went from the South, like not everyone, but, Chicago, Detroit, right, like, and I realized that it's not the racism, it's not the fascism, it's not the authoritarianism. Like you said, Derek, we have had that since the beginning of time, since they were doing this with the Choctaw, right? Like, and the Africans coming off on the boats, right? Like, it's how we respond. So in Clarksdale, which they got way less than a lot of Negroes in Boston.
Yeah.
Right? They respond by creating music that is played around the world. They respond by becoming griots. Right? Like Philly responds with organizing, the Move organizing. They do so well that, they're building, their whole block is bombed. Right? Like Chicago's coming in.
Just need to make clear.
Right. By the authorities.
By the authorities. Just make
by the authorities. Right. Thank you. Right. By the authorities. Chicago, we all looking fly, listening to Kendrick, right? Like having a good time. Like you see more economical Black success in Chicago, right? Like, but yet we're all together, like, the lieutenant governor was at the Kendrick concert, right? Like and it feels different than it feels in Boston. And so I think that's important, especially because I know like a lot of times, we go to the Cape, we go to the Vineyard, we go to New York City, like we don't actually maybe go to the Delta, right? We don't actually go to the South, which has 60% of African Americans, right? Of Black people that are part of the African American journey are in the South, right? Like, but that story for me, or that those experiences helped me form this story of like what Black community is. And so I want to like end giving that like, I think we're always going to have people trying to destroy us, but it's how we actually protect that cookout that lets us know if we're going to evolve, if we're going to have safety, and if we're going to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-determination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kuju Shaka Leah, no.
Yes. Well, no, that's a very astute way of looking at it all. Because again, we say there's no Black monolith, or there's no monolith in the Black community, and that is so true. And I like how you use your individual experiences to explain that. And I'm sure if anybody on the West Coast, any Black folks on the West Coast, Seattle, LA, or even in Hawaii or Alaska listening to this, they're probably just like, we don't know what maybe they're not saying we don't know what you guys are talking about, but that sounds different than what we're experiencing. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, Melanie didn't see Sinners, so we can't talk about it.
You can. And honestly, I've heard so many interviews. I know what happens in the thing. I'm just like, can I sit there and withstand it?
I will say this.
I was giving you an out.
Because I'm the cousin that just be showing up at y'all's house. Like, never mind the cookout. I'll just show up when y'all sitting around. Melanie, if it's on TV now.
This is true. No, this is about who am I going to watch it with?
So I will have no sense and I will come over and watch it with you. Because you need to see it. I mean, this is for the culture.
I know.
And it is scary. And I don't like scary movies, but it's so... No, don't judge scariness. That's a very subjective...
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like...
I will not have you fear shame me.
There's no shaming. I'm just saying, there's people listening who are like, I don't know. I just want to reassure them that not everybody thinks it's that scary.
It's gory. It's like
Absolutely.
half of the movie. I even know when in the movie it turns. I've heard so much.
No, I'll tell you this. There are points, but then like when okay, spoiler alert again, when the clan gets killed, you're applauding. You know what I'm saying? You're like, yeah, kill him.
We need this. We need this.
Yes, yes. And I will actually say that for me, like, and there was blood and there was gore, and I don't like that. But one of the grossest parts was when there was some vampire sex happening and someone spit in someone's mouth. And I was like, that's just not my kink. It's not my kink at all, at all, at all, at all.
I think we should end here. Suffice to say, if you haven't seen Sinners, we recommend watching it. We recommend it to
I
you.
mean, the thing that convinced me, I heard Ryan Coogler be interviewed about it. At least I've heard a couple of interviews with him, and one of them he wept talking about the significance of making this film. And he is just so sincere, so sharp, so real, so insightful, so incisive, and then also so expansive and generous. Thinking about the discipline of the blues and what we learned from that and the culture and what resides in us from that. I'm like, yes, I have to sit down and see this film. I need the right container. So I will do it.
Okay. We'll look forward to,
Okay, and if you need
talking
an
with you about it.
accountability buddy,
All right, thank you.
let me know because we will start just giving you side eye.
Well deserved. Yes. Okay.
All right, everyone. Well, thank both of you for being here again. Well, Melanie, thank Malia for being here again. And for those of you who are watching or listening, have a great summer. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Black Landing Forum. Take care.
Hello.